Welcome to the motherfucking lady. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, and now it's time for another installment of what has fast become the most popular segment here on the channel, Ring IQ Hate Mail. Bobby D is back, but this time he's mad. Before it was just a segment of the Ring IQ mailbag, now it's definitely a segment of the Ring IQ hate mail, as he said. How much are those small hats paying you? Anti-Semitism, anyone? You little weasel. Boxing is much more a free market where fighters actually can negotiate what they're worth because of the Ali Act. The UFC basically employs the managers and will only work with certain managers and have slave contracts so that they can keep the fighter pay under 20%. As they should. Be honest, you little cockroach. Stop making this about the fighters getting paid too much. I don't hear you saying Dana White gets paid too much. Why would I say that? It's his company. If you don't want to fight for Dana White, you don't have to. Those fighters choose to and then complain about it so that sad saps like you can play them the violin. You want to suck their dicks? You want to have a slumber party with Sean Strickland? You want to go pumpkin patching with Patty Pimblett? Bobby D continued. What a little hand-rubbing twat you are. Pipe-riding little goy puppy. What a liberal loser you are. I guess it sort of went over this guy's head that the more overblown the fighters' demands become, the more expensive boxing becomes to the consumer. The more expensive it becomes to the consumer, the less people buy it, the less people watch it. The audience begins to shrink. Or did this fucking bozo not notice that boxing is no longer a mainstream sport? But it used to be. There is a direct correlation in the postmodern era of boxers making more, but the audience watching less. You can't ask a commie piece of crap like Bobby D to understand that. Pardon me, a democratic socialist. It's an imbalance that makes for big trouble, because if the fighters in this era, on average, are making more for what is a smaller audience, then who picks up the tab? Who's supposed to make up the difference? We are, you fucking idiot. Do you think it's better for boxing as an industry that it's become too expensive for ordinary Joes to watch it? That most every single fight worth watching ends up behind a paywall, but that didn't used to be the case. You can't ask a fucking commie to talk about economics. They don't understand anything. This isn't hard to understand, or it shouldn't be. In previous eras of boxing, when boxing was more mainstream and a lot more people watched it on average, it was more affordable, and you were getting high-caliber fights on a regular basis, many of which were not behind a paywall, whereas now, the audience that watches boxing is smaller, but the price tag is bigger. And that is not sustainable. You're so fucking worried about the fighters getting whatever they ask for. What are you hoping for? That one of those sweaty men high-fives you on the way to the locker rooms? Don't you fucking understand? Yeah. You can't grow the sport if it's becoming more expensive to the consumer. That's literally why people aren't watching as much. And what's with all the anti-Semitism? Because Mel Brooks and Jerry Seinfeld ain't the reason you're broken bitter. Gal Gadot is not the reason you're not where you want to be in life. And that must be the case for you to harbor so much ill will towards so many strangers, none of which did anything to you directly. You think you're informed, sitting in your crummy apartment watching TikTok reels? Fucking commie. Fucking loser. I can tell you don't understand free market capitalism. Running a business. The boxers are expendable assets. There's no shortage of them, but there is a shortage of promoters and a shortage of broadcasters that actually want to show boxing. So if you want to keep showing boxing, you've got to balance the budget. You can't overspend. But that's what's happening, and that's what's been happening. Can't expect you to understand that because you think the small hats are the reason you're a fucking loser. The boxers themselves are tantamount to entry-level employees, and if you leave it up to them, it's always supposed to work out where they get more money. Because who doesn't want more money? Because even you want more money, you fucking incel. And the problem is, the ends have to justify the means. If the operational costs for a show are in the neighborhood of $8.5 million, you need to at least be able to generate that. At least break even, get your money back, make a profit if you're lucky. But with demands like these, becoming more and more difficult. Maybe you don't understand that most of these promoters, most of the time, are operating at a deficit. Shows they do usually lose money, and that can only go on but for so long before they go under. Is that what you want, Mr. Boxing Fan? So mad at Dana White. Oddly enough, Dana White and his UFC don't have that problem because they don't overpay their fighters. They're not in the red, they're in the black.
That's why. And you think that makes him the bad guy.
No, that makes you an idiot. A fucking idiot, because these promoters, whether it's in mixed martial arts or boxing, they're the ones that put the money up to make these shows happen, not the fighters. Without the promoters, the fighters ain't got the fucking brains to do it all on their own.
And the few that do don't have the money.
Whose money do you think it is they're using when they sign a fighter out of the amateurs into the pros to build a show around them and secure opponents, marketing, promotion?
Whose money do you think they're using?
So that you can get upset that a promoter is in the black, because God forbid that you make an ROI on what is your investment.
Moron.
If you're not going to get anything in return, then why invest? As stated, it isn't hard to understand. If boxing in this era is a lot more expensive than it used to be in spite of the audience being smaller, it's because the fighters keep pricing themselves out. It's because they're asking for too much money.
That's why there are so many pay-per-views. Did you not notice that? And how many of those pay-per-views do you buy?
Because you care so much about the fighters and you want to support them, so how many times a year do you want to come out of pocket between $60 to $80 when DAZN does over 12 pay-per-views, and Amazon's been doing all of theirs up until recently? That was separate.
You want to support the fighters, so support them, you fucking idiot.
Men's lightweight news. Timothy Bradley backs Lamont Roach Jr. to win, but sees one big problem. The Hall of Famer believes William Zepeda's relentless punch output could overwhelm Roach despite sticking with his original pick. Tim Bradley has not changed his pick for Friday's vacant WBC lightweight title fight, but he admits his confidence in Lamont Roach has faded after studying William Zepeda's style. The Hall of Famer now believes Zepeda's relentless work rate could become the decisive factor over 12 rounds. I said Roach, but I'm not confident in my pick at all, Bradley said on his Into the Storm show. Bradley's biggest concern is volume. Roach often fights selectively on offense, while Zepeda throws nearly twice as many punches. He questioned whether judges will reward precision over constant activity if Zepeda controls the pace from the opening bell. You've got one guy that's very choosy, and the other guy, he don't give a damn. He's just letting his hands go, Bradley said. Wherever they land, wherever they fall, he's in your grill all night.
There are a lot of fingers in this pie for what is this weekend's card that's being shared between DAZN and TNT. You have Bob Arum involved,
TGB, Tom Brown,
Gary Jonas of ProBox, and Golden Boy on behalf of William Zepeda in the main event. And I don't know, but I get the impression that it's Golden Boy at the helm of the promotion.
What could be a deciding factor if the fight goes to the cards. Roach's lone defeat also caught Bradley's attention. Southpaw Jamel Herring used his size and work rate to earn a unanimous decision, and Bradley sees similarities with what Zepeda brings to the ring. The only loss on his resume came to a southpaw, Bradley said. Herring outworked him. That comparison does not guarantee history repeats itself. Roach remains one of the sport's sharpest technicians and has shown he can frustrate aggressive opponents. His defense gives him a legitimate path to victory if he can disrupt Zepeda's rhythm. The real question is whether Roach can build enough of a lead on the scorecards before Zepeda's pressure begins to pile up.
We've already got some insights into what this fight might look like. Go back to Lamont Roach's last fight with Isaac Cruz, a pressure fighter like William Zepeda is a pressure fighter, except that he's a shorter, stumpier guy, and he was able to give Lamont Roach a lot of problems in the opening stanza,
knocking him down in the third round. Before the fight reached the midway point, Lamont Roach was able to grow into the fight, whereas with William,
Isaac Cruz normally throws a lot of punches, and William Zepeda throws even more punches than him. It's like you've got a machine in front of you, Bradley said. You're going to need a knockout, or you're going to have to hurt this guy really, really bad.
A volume puncher, like William Zepeda, is going to give you many countering opportunities. However, Lamont Roach ain't all that big a puncher, and I don't think it helps that he hasn't made this weight in a long time, over a year by my count, in March of the previous one when he fought Gervonta Davis. His last fight,
he fought Gervonta at 135, and he fought Isaac Cruz more recently at 140.
That means he's yo-yoing in weight. He went up for Isaac Cruz, now he's coming back down for William, and I think that could weaken him, and he's already not that big a puncher. I don't see Lamont Roach knocking out William.
If anybody's gonna knock out anybody, it's William knocking out Lamont by wearing him out, wearing him down into the later rounds.
Timothy Bradley is right to assume that the frenetic pace William sets for a fight is a problem. It could be a big problem for Lamont Roach. It's easy to say that you're going to work off the counter and work off the openings that William gives you, but just remember, when you go to counter one punch, there's another one coming right behind it, and another one, and another one, and another one, because this guy's like a machine gun. Working off the counter is easier said than done, and even if you get in with a few good shots, a few here and there,
You're not gonna outwork this guy in terms of output. That's established.
the one or two punches you throw, the one or two punches that land, may not be enough to keep this guy off of you. The only caveat is that William Zepeda hasn't fought since the Shakur Stevenson fight, and that was a while ago. It's a double-edged sword. It could be that all the time off has left him refreshed, invigorated, and energized, or it might have made him rusty.
We'll find out on Saturday.
But Lamont Roach definitely has some drawbacks going in as well, that he's been yo-yoing in weight. He went up to 140 for his last fight, now he's dropping back down to 135. He was never that big a puncher, he was never a knockout merchant.
Yo-yoing in weight may weaken him.
And even if his last fight with Isak Cruz was a good rehearsal for the fight that he's about to have, I view William as a higher grade, a better grade of pressure fighter than Isak Cruz.
So I've got William.
Playoff and everything, I've got William. I think that at minimum, William can outwork Lamont Roach and win a points decision. At the very most, he can wear him down, wear him out, knock him out.
What I think is gonna happen.
Elsewhere in the world of boxing, an update to a previous story we talked about here on the channel. Errol Spence Jr. deserves to be in the Hall of Fame, says Andre Vord. The 36-year-old from DeSoto, Texas, retired following a one-sided loss to Tim Kazoo in his middleweight debut last weekend in Sydney after a 3-year layoff. Now, the former IBF, WBA, and WBC welterweight champion will have to wait to see whether he gets a call from the International Boxing Hall of Fame in 3 years, or more, if he doesn't enter on the first ballot.
For some, Spence hasn't done quite enough to earn an induction. For others, including Andre Ward, a 2021 Hall of Famer in his own right, there should be no debate. Spence has victories over Kell Brook, Lamont Peterson, Mikey Garcia, Sean Porter, Danny Garcia, and Lugos.
I'm sorry, but if those names are what's supposed to make the case for him, they don't make it for me. That doesn't mean he won't get in. It's up to the voting panel on how they feel, but how I feel?
Not good enough.
Yes, Ward told The Ring. I believe he should be a Hall of Famer. He had a great career. He's one of the last dying breed that will get down with anybody. He's taken more risks post-car wreck than some guys have in their whole careers. Spence had at least one piece of the welterweight championship from 2017 to 2023 when he was at his best. The DeSoto, Texas resident was an aggressive come-forward fighter who threw punches in bunches.
Out of those 4 or 5 aforementioned names, you know, Kell Brook was coming off a loss.
Lamont Peterson never did anything worth remembering as a welterweight, neither did Mikey Garcia. Mikey had no prior experience at 147 before fighting Spence, so you have to mitigate how much credit you give him.
Danny Garcia. Danny never beat anybody good the whole time he was at 147. Any and every top shelf welterweight he fought beat him.
Ugas? What's Ugas's claim to fame? Beating a 41-year-old Manny Pacquiao off a 2-year layoff?
Look, it's a solid resume Errol has. Solid, but I don't see it as Hall of Fame worthy.
And on the biggest night of his career, what turned out to be the biggest fight of his career, he went down 3 times and was knocked out in 9 by Terrence Crawford in July of 2023, 3 years ago, the brutal setback, as well as the horrific car crash that could have cost him his life in 2019, seemed to have truncated his career as an elite fighter. Spence did have some success after the accident. He returned from a 1-year break, giving him time to recover to outpoint 2-division champion Danny Garcia in December of 2020, and then he added his final title, the WBA title, by stopping Lugos a year and a half later.
Okay then, don't tell me he was damaged goods if he kept winning after the accident.
You know, they talk about the Crawford fight like Errol Spence Jr. walked into the ring on crutches. They tell you he was damaged goods, but right after the accident, he fought Danny and he beat Danny, who you guys give him credit for. And after that, he fought Ugas and he beat Ugas, who you also give him credit for.
Make up your mind. He was good enough to beat them, so why wasn't he good enough to beat Terrence? Maybe it's because Terrence is just better, and he always was.
The bit about Errol Spence Jr. being a Hall of Famer or not being a Hall of Famer gets a lot of attention. Chad Travis said, "Not sure whether Errol should get into the Hall of Fame, but he definitely has a better CV than Golovkin, and they have the same amount of belts. I didn't think Golovkin deserved to get in, so I think they should let Errol in." Sort of a retort to that same argument, since a lot of people make it. Vince Cummings said, "The Triple G is in, so Errol gets in argument is hilarious. I don't think G should have been first ballot by any means, but he had a historic run of defenses against, albeit, mid-level competition, while also being openly ducked and was robbed of his Hall of Fame defining win."
Talking about the first Canelo fight, I myself scored that fight 8-4 for Golovkin, so I sort of agree.
Here's the thing. I don't think Triple G has all that great a resume, I don't. But I believe what they looked at when considering him was his number of consecutive title defenses, of which he's got a lot. 15 of a full title, and about 20 if you include the regular one.
Which they did.
You're always hearing about Joe Louis's record for title defenses, about 25. Larry Holmes, I think he had 20 or 21. Klitschko had 19.
So the title defenses could have came up when considering Golovkin for the International Boxing Hall of Fame is entirely possible. And while Errol held the same number of titles at welter that Golovkin held at middle, Golovkin is a two-time middleweight champion. Errol is not.
When Errol lost his belts, he never got them back at any weight, in any division, whereas after Golovkin loses his belts to Canelo, he won them back. He got the IBF on the bounce and picked up the WBA from then champion Ryota Murata. He is a two-time middleweight champion, whereas Errol was only a champion once in terms of marquee value, sales.
Golovkin was a bigger draw than Errol by a lot. The biggest fight that Errol was ever in was the Crawford fight, which did somewhere in the neighborhood of 600,000 or 700,000, whereas Triple G was involved in not one, not two, but 3 fights that raked in 1 million or over 1 million pay-per-view buys.
Sold out Madison Square Garden in New York, sold out the O2 Arena in London. I believe he also used to sell out on the West Coast. He is categorically a bigger draw than Errol ever was, and I think they also factored that into the equation so that when you put it all together, Golovkin is a marginally more accomplished fighter than Errol, who fought on a more consistent basis, and he was a bigger draw, which strengthens his argument a little more than Errol's. Ultimately, I do think Errol's gonna get in.
Off of sympathy.
I think it matters a great deal who else is on the ballot, but I could see Errol Spence Jr. eventually getting into the Hall. I'm just saying, I personally don't think he's had a Hall of Fame career.
Maybe he was one big win away from qualifying, at least for me. But how it is, I wouldn't vote him in.